Good afternoon. I'm Duncan. I'm going to talk about being rational about cybersecurity instead of being driven by emotion. I'm going to start with a little bit about me, then use some scare tactics, then cover how we can be more rational instead of using scare tactics. I'll babble for a bit and have time for questions when I'm done, and I have prizes for the first two questions. Now, how many attended the Cyber Safety Symposium yesterday? You can read about my bio to find out more about me. I was introduced to cybersecurity before there was an internet. I was a government contractor and got to hack into foreign computers as part of the first Iraqi war in 1990 and 1991. The war effort taught me how far behind the defense was, so the rest of my career has been on bettering the defense. I am a member of I Am the Cavalry. Now, scare tactics are a way of life in this industry, and you should be scared because there are evil people out there doing evil things. And this is especially important in cyber-physical systems because we need to get to the left of boom. This fire at a refinery was not caused by hackers to my knowledge, but it could have been. Cyber-physical systems have safety implications. This is the Deepwater Horizon BP oil spill. I'll look at it in the context of Industry 4.0, a system of systems. There were 8 failures that combined to cause this disaster, or to make it worse than it would have been. Now, none were caused by hackers that I know of, but all 8 failures have plausible attack vectors, so they could have been caused by hackers. There are attacks against sensors and attacks against actuators, both of which you can see right next door here at the ICS Village. You can attack the influence decision-making process. You can feed false information that will cause wrong decisions. And you can even attack suppliers. Now, supply chain is interesting because a threat to your customer results in an attack against you. Now, cyber-physical systems are where bits and bytes meets flesh and blood. This is an I Am the Cavalry quote from Josh Corman, the PTT Chief Security Officer and founder of I Am the Cavalry. At DEF CON, he and some doctors did a simulation of hacking a pump and faux killing a patient. Now, the patient was Bo Woods, is right over there, so you can tell it was only a faux killing. But it was very realistic, and the doctors seriously made mistakes, not realizing the information they were being fed was wrong, and because the instruments were not doing what they were supposed to be doing. Now, several years ago, I learned how to hack a pacemaker. So cyber is no longer just a financial issue, but also a safety issue. Now, this slide is for my talk tomorrow on software bill of materials, shameless plug, another passion of mine, but it's here to be my scare tactic for healthcare. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt, or FUD, as those of us who love acronyms call it, is not a good thing as a long-term motivator. Fear is good for fight or flight, spur-of-the-moment crisis, getting your adrenaline up. But over the next 5 years, we're projected to spend $1 trillion on cybersecurity. Yes, that's trillion with a T. This is too big a number to not be rational about. After a while, FUD rolls off like water off a duck. We cyber geeks tend to speak in gobbledygook and then cry wolf, and you know what happened to the boy who cried wolf. Now, Melanie Ensign gave an excellent keynote at Borderless Cyber last year on why fear does not work as a motivator. Google it and watch it. It's quite interesting. She loves sharks. There's good shark stuff in there, and it's an interesting video, even if you don't care about what I'm talking about. Now, this is from the movie Jerry Maguire, and it should be the mantra of cybersecurity. We base too much on FUD, and instead we should be using science and engineering and making informed decisions based on risk. Now, I highly recommend this book, even though I didn't particularly like their writing style, and I'll give one away at the end of the first good question. It's used as a course text, and I think that course should be required for anyone in cybersecurity, required for anyone in software engineering, and required for anyone in industrial IoT. Cybersecurity professionals like myself think our field is more unique than it really is. We need to get over ourselves. Other fields have massive risk, minimal data, and chaotic actors, and we need to learn from them. Now, this conference is on digital transformation, which is in its infancy. So we have a chance to get ahead of the game here. Now, I can't distill an entire semester into 2 minutes, so I'm going to cover just one tool. It's called the loss exceedance curve. You read it as following. Now, we spend money to reduce risk, and the authors show how everything can be done in monetary terms. In particular, this curve. The blue says there's a 90% chance you will lose at least $10,000 due to a cyber event in the next year. The gold says there's a 50% chance you'll lose at least $5 million due to cyber in the next year. So note it's a log scale. The orange says there's a 10% chance you'll lose at least $100 million due to cyber in the next year. And if you look real close, you'll see there's a 1% chance you'll lose $500 million. Now, whether it's a good chart or a bad chart depends on your company. To many smaller companies, this would be horrible, a 1 in chance of going bankrupt, and firms have been bankrupted by hacks. However, a large bank might love to have it this good. Now, the chart can also be done in terms of safety, and you could use casualties instead of dollars on the x-axis. The point is to pay some attention to those low probability, high impact events, but not pay too much attention to them. Get them calibrated correctly. Now, this is a more realistic case of the curve where its decision is not as obvious. You need to spend some money up front because that cybersecurity vendor talked you into buying a $500,000 thing, and they did it because it looks like it's going to save you $4 million a year. So that's a good deal. But turns out it may bankrupt your business. Now, how's this possible? It might be a case of all your eggs in one basket, or it might be if your supplier gets compromised. But it's easily solved. Instead of only spending $500,000, spend $1 million instead, and invert that curve down below by either adding some more controls or adding some insurance. You'll still save millions. Now, I also highly recommend this book. I'll give away one of these as well. The FAIR Institute is a nonprofit dedicated to measuring and managing risk. FAIR stands for Factor Analysis of Information Risk. And I'll cover it in the next few slides. Now, this is a quote from Jack Jones, one of the co-founders of the FAIR Institute and a co-author of the book. And basically, we're spending our budgets in the wrong places because we're not using these scientific methods. So not only are we wasting money, more importantly, we're not covering the most critical risks. Now, this is the FAIR model. It's now a standard published by the Open Group. It starts out by defining risk. Risk is the probability of a loss incident of a certain size within a certain time period. So it's a probability distribution, not a single number. It's that loss exceedance curve I showed earlier. And a really important point is that it can be decomposed into different types of events with differing impacts. It can be decomposed across business units, across geography, and across technologies. So you can solve many small practical models and sum them all up using proven statistical methods. So this is something FAIR does that can't be done with ordinal methods like red, yellow, green, or high, medium, low. It's quantitative. It has measurable, trackable metrics, and therefore can be improved over time. Now, another major bonus using FAIR is that its results are understandable by corporate executives and the board. Instead of vulnerabilities and patches and cyber technobabble hand-waving, you're discussing business impact and financials with terms they'll understand. In fact, much of the details of this modeling was taken from financial risk modeling. Now, learning FAIR takes time, and I can't do it justice here, but it is being used successfully and proving itself worthwhile. Now, I'm going to change tactics for just a minute. I try and throw in a gratuitous other topic in each talk I give. I normally talk on security automation and throw in the economics of risk, so here I'm going to reverse it. Since this conference is on digital transformation, I'll show some data here on how security automation can drastically lower your risk posture. Now, this is data to plug into those red-blue loss exceedance curves I mentioned earlier. Security automation, just like in manufacturing, automation is a win-win. It's cheaper and it's better. Now, this data is from Johns Hopkins University, and with automation, they reduced the time the hacker was in their system by 2 orders of magnitude. So not an incremental change, an exponential change. And I'm sure if you did this in your equivalent business, it would be similar. So, what should you take away from this talk? Use money, not emotion, to make purchasing decisions. Use the tools in these books. Read these books, even though they might be a tough read at times. They are textbooks. They have good tools in them, like loss exceedance curves. Don't accept single number answers. Use probability distributions. Use how they can be decomposed and recombined. They're quantitative. Don't use bogus math like qualitative ordinal numbers or red, yellow, green, 1 through 5. Now, for more information, the FAIR Institute is a nonprofit dedicated to measuring and managing risk. The Open Group has a standard on the FAIR ontology and analysis, and it's got publications and a body of knowledge and a group of experts. And there are also vendors in this space. Now, so far, I've only found one, and vendors are a lot like piñatas. They're fun to pick on. I have no association with this vendor, but I do have several friends who I trust their judgment, and they use this vendor for their tools in this area. One's in a government agency, and one's at a large bank. Now, I don't know if RiskLens will be the Wang word processor or the Microsoft Word. When I started work, there were 400 people in the typing pool in my building, and we hand wrote memos, sent them down the typing pool. They brought them back, and as typed sheets of paper, we made changes, and they retyped the whole things. Wang invented the word processor, made a radical change to the industry. I think these techniques will make a radical change to our industry. Again, I don't know if RiskLens will be Wang or RiskLens will be Microsoft Word, but I do predict that just like we all use word processors now, we'll all be using tools like this not that far into the future. Dan Geer is a thought leader in cyber, and I like how he ends his talk, so I blatantly reuse his ending. There's never enough time. Thank you for yours. Feel free to contact me. This is one of my passions. Any questions, and I have these 2 books here for the first 2 good questions.